Meet Keith Moon, aka Moon the Loon, a rock drumming legend. His wild energy and unique style made him iconic. From trashing drum kits after shows to joyriding a Rolls Royce into a pool and even throwing dynamite into his bass drum, Moon embraced every bit of craziness. In fact, Moon wasn't your typical drummer. He was a showman. Hotel rooms were his canvas for destruction, and he once put a live fish in his drum. Wild, right? But amid the chaos, Moon's drumming skills were unparalleled. His beats were the heartbeat of rock history. In the world of drummers, he was a maverick, pushing boundaries and leaving an indelible mark. So buckle up as we dive into what made Keith Moon a musical force like no other. Born on August 23, 1946 in Wembley, London, Moon's early years were marked by hyperactivity and trouble. His teachers, frustrated by his antics, once described him in a school report as, and I'm quoting, retarded artistically, idiotic in other respects. Yet in the middle of this criticism, his music teacher recognized his potential, cautioning, has great ability, but must guard against tendency to show off. Leaving school at the age of 14, Moon took an unconventional path. Despite enrolling in college and becoming a radio repairer, his passion for music endured. His mother supported his musical journey by purchasing a cheap drum kit, and by 1961, Moon had mastered the basics, even receiving lessons from local club legend Carlo Little. His early affiliations included the Beachcombers, a surf music band, and later the Detours, an emerging London R&B act. In April of 1964, at the tender age of 17, Moon tried out for The Who, aiming to replace their drummer Doug Sandham. Here's a colorful tale of how Moon joined The Who. At a show shortly after Sandham left, Moon, dressed in flashy ginger clothes with dyed hair, described as a ginger vision by bandmate Pete Townsend, claimed he could play better than the session drummer they had. He got on stage for the second half of the set, nearly demolishing the drum kit in the process. Moon recalled, and I'm quoting, I went "Argh" on the drums, broke the bass drum pedal in two skins, and got off. Surprisingly, he got the gig. Moon later shared that he was never officially invited to join The Who permanently. When Ringo Starr asked, Moon replied he had just been filling in for the last 15 years. With Moon on board, The Who's dynamics changed. Unlike the peacemaking Sandham, Moon's temperament led to frequent conflicts among all four members. Moon remembered, John, meaning John Entwistle, and I used to have fights. It wasn't very serious, more of an emotional spur-of-the-moment thing. Moon clashed with Daltrey and Townsend, admitting they had little in common outside of music. But despite the conflicts, Moon's drumming style had a significant impact. Although Entwistle initially found Moon's unconventional timekeeping challenging, it ultimately created an original sound for the band. Moon loved touring, seeing it as a chance to regularly socialize with his bandmates. When not on the road, he became restless and bored, embodying his life as if his life were one long tour, as journalist Dave Marsh described. His lively off-stage antics earned him the nickname Moon the Loon.
Called the Oldfield Hotel.
He broke his drum.
He smashed up the drummer's drum kit.
The arrival of Moon not only changed the rhythm, but also the colorful, chaotic spirit of The Who. Moon's newfound wealth triggered a period of self-destructive behavior. From blowing up toilets to demolishing hotel rooms and consuming colossal amounts of alcohol, his antics became legendary. Despite Townsend's frustration with Moon's wild abandon, a close look at his drumming style revealed a blend of ferocity and poise, reflecting his personality. Moon played from the heart, combining lightning-fast reactions with a genuine feel for music and a flair for the dramatic. His drumming was not just a skill, but an expression of his unique character, encompassing both grandiosity and ridiculousness. Despite Moon's explosive and erratic behavior, his drumming stood out as a key element of The Who's performances. There was simply no one else on Earth who played like him. Now, if we talk about the instruments that he used in the early days, Moon played a 4 and later a 5-piece drum kit. Around 1964 and 1965, he rocked Ludwig drums and Silgian cymbals. Then, in late 1965, he became a big fan of Premier drums, sticking with them faithfully. His first Premier kit was Red Sparkle and had 2 high toms. As 1966 rolled in, Moon upgraded to an even bigger kit. But here's the kicker: no hi-hat. At that time, he liked rocking ride rhythms with ride and crash cymbals. He later brought the hi-hats back into the mix. Now here's where Moon gets even cooler. His larger kit in 1966 featured not one, but two bass drums, making him a pioneer, along with Ginger Baker, of double bass drumming in rock. But interestingly, he didn't use this setup at the 1967 Monterey Pop Festival. From 1967 to 1969, Moon grooved with the Pictures of Lily drum kit, named after its artwork. Picture this: two 22-inch bass drums, two 16-inch floor toms, and three mounted toms. Premiere, recognizing Moon's loyalty, even reissued this kit in 2006 as the Spirit of Lily. As the 1970s rolled in, Moon added timbales, gongs, and timpani to his setup, keeping them around for the rest of his career. His natural intelligence and quick wit made him a public relations dream for the band, even in the face of mishaps, such as the 1973 gig at the Cow Palace in America. On that night, Moon took several animal tranquilizers before the show, leading to him passing out midway. Despite several attempts to revive him, he couldn't complete the performance. In a twist of rock and roll legend, The Who spontaneously brought 19-year-old Scott Halpin from the audience to fill in. While amusing, this incident nearly cost Moon his life. Townsend remembered the drummer being temporarily wheelchair-bound during recovery. In the subsequent years, Moon's health took a steep decline. Despite a move to America, where he lived next to Steve McQueen, whom he regularly infuriated by dressing up as Hitler and parading outside his home, The Who's inactivity in the mid-1970s left Moon bored. This led him to attempt a disastrous solo album. Throughout this period, Moon's self-destructive tendencies escalated. He indulged in excessive drinking, overeating, experimented with various destructive drugs, and ultimately burned himself out. Moon was quite the rebel when it came to drumming. Unlike his buddy John Bonham from Led Zeppelin, Moon despised drum solos, finding them boring. It's a bit ironic given his wild reputation, but there's only one recorded instance of Moon doing a drum solo. Talk about keeping things interesting. John Entwistle, the band's bassist, was astounded by Moon's studio drum solos, adding to the enigma of why he refused to do them live. Some argue that Moon's entire approach to drumming was one giant, never-ending drum solo, a quirky take on the art. Moon's last hurrah with The Who on May 25, 1978, was memorable for all the wrong reasons. Picture this: Moon, now looking way older than his 32 years, snorting a massive line of cocaine before their final set. It was a visual shock for his bandmates. Physically, Moon had transformed, gaining a lot of weight. Behind the scenes, he was contemplating quitting drumming altogether, a tidbit shared in Tony Fletcher's biography, Dear Boy. Moon likely battled ADHD, among other psychological conditions, made worse by his heavy drinking and drug use. Moon's drumming magic with The Who remains unparalleled. Somehow, he held the band together, treating the drums like the lead instrument and maintaining an insane level of energy. Even if the jazz drumming community turned up their noses, Moon is still a hero to many. Sadly, Moon's story took a tragic turn in 1978 when he overdosed on clomethazole tablets mixed with alcohol. He was just 32. Despite his short life, his legacy endures, influencing generations of drummers. His wild offstage antics serve as cautionary tales and reminders of living life to the fullest. So, let's raise a glass to the brilliant and complex Keith Moon on what would have been his birthday. There truly is no substitute. If you enjoyed this musical journey through the early chapters of Keith Moon's career, exploring the roots of his legendary status, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Stay tuned for more engaging content delving into the fascinating history of music.